All right, so you're with us today for a deep dive. And we've got, some pretty interesting research to dig into all about this thing called the expertise reversal effect.
Yeah,
And our mission, for this session is to really understand how the best way to learn something, how that changes as you actually get better at it.
exactly.
So I guess kind of the core idea here is that what works really well when you're a beginner, when you're just starting out with something, might actually hold you back or even be a bad thing once you've, gained more experience.
Right.
And this all kind of comes out of this field called cognitive load theory, which
Mm.
is, all about how our brains handle new information, how much mental effort is involved when we're trying to learn.
Yeah, it's all about that processing power.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that, this research paper we've got here, it kind of points out that most of the learning resources we see out there in the world, like the courses and the textbooks and, all that stuff,
Tutorials, yeah.
yeah, they're really designed for those novices. Right.
Or-
Yeah, for people who are just starting out.
Makes sense.
So the question is, what happens to us? What happens to you when you're no longer that beginner?
Right, exactly. Because the way you need to learn changes,
Yeah. Yeah.
as you get better.
So that's kind of the puzzle we're going to tackle here.
Absolutely.
So in this deep dive, we're going to start by just kind of looking at how our brains are set up, how they're structured, how they actually, handle learning.
The architecture, yeah.
Yeah.
The fundamental architecture.
And then we're going to jump into some concrete examples, some real world situations where this expertise reversal effect plays out.
Right, because it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So we'll look at, different ways of teaching, different types of learning materials,
Right.
and see how this effect pops up.
And we'll even touch on some earlier ideas about how to, match the way you teach to a person's abilities, because that actually fits in here too.
All connected, yeah.
And then, ultimately, I think what we really want to get at is how understanding all of this, how can that help create a more personalized and effective learning experience specifically for you?
Exactly, because that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. To optimize how we learn.
Yeah, make it work for you.
So, all right, let's start with those nuts and bolts of how our brains learn, how they work.
Okay.
Um, this paper really stresses that our minds, are built upon what we already know.
Right.
It kind of uses this analogy of your long-term memory being like this huge library.
Yeah, a vast repository.
Yeah, and it's constantly being organized with all the information you've
Yeah,
gathered.
you got to keep it all straight.
Right. And these organized chunks of knowledge, that's what we call schemas, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So whenever you encounter something new, your brain is immediately trying to connect it to these existing frameworks.
You're trying to make sense of it, fit it in.
Yeah. And when you say schemas, are we talking about those mental shortcuts that our brains make, based on our experience?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So think about it this way. Like, if you've seen a dog before, you have a schema for dog in your mind.
Right.
Right. So, 4 legs, tail, barks.
Right.
When you see a new breed, your brain just slots it right into that existing framework.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how we efficiently process the world.
Okay. So that's how we make sense of things.
Right.
Now, how does this long-term memory actually interact with our working memory, when we're in the process of trying to learn something new?
So what's fascinating is this interplay between the two,
Mhm.
right? So you have your long-term memory, like we talked about, that vast library,
Yeah.
and then you have working memory,
Mm-hmm.
which is where we're actively processing new information. It's like
Right.
your mental workspace right now as you're listening to this.
Right.
And the key thing to remember about working memory is that it's limited. It's limited in how much information it can handle at once.
Yeah.
And it's limited in how long it can hold on to that information, especially if it's something completely new.
Right. Right.
So, if you overload it, things start to fall apart.
Yeah, and I think we've all experienced that.
Well, absolutely.
Like if you're a complete novice, say, you're trying to learn a new language, like everything is new.
Right. It's all foreign.
Yeah, the grammar, the vocabulary, the pronunciation, it's all, completely foreign.
Yeah. And you're trying to keep it all in your head at the same time.
Yeah, your working memory is just like on fire.
Exactly. It's like juggling too many balls.
Yeah.
And that's why beginners often really benefit from those external aids, right?
Right.
Like
right.
really clear step-by-step instructions
Mm.
or really structured learning materials, things that break it down.
Yeah, those training wheels,
Yeah, exactly. You need that support in the beginning.
So that's the novice side of things. But then how does our long-term memory actually step in to help out?
Well, as you learn and you start building those schemas, those frameworks in your long-term memory,
Mm-hmm.
it starts to take some of the pressure off your working memory.
Okay.
And it does this in a couple of key ways.
Okay.
First, it allows you to group those individual pieces of information into larger chunks,
Okay.
right? It's like, think about learning to read.
Mm-hmm.
At first, each letter is this separate thing you have to process.
Right.
But as you learn, you start seeing whole words as a single unit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like your brain's compressing the data.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the second way is through what we call automaticity,
Okay.
which basically means when you practice a skill over and over, it becomes automatic.
Right.
You don't have to think about it as much consciously.
Yeah.
It's like, think about typing on a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
When you first start, you're hunting and pecking for every key.
Right. Right.
But with practice, your fingers just know where to go.
Yeah.
Right. And that frees up your mental resources for the more complex parts of the task.
Okay.
Like actually composing your thoughts rather than just finding the letters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for novices, it's all about juggling those individual pieces.
Right.
But experts, they can rely on that well-established knowledge base.
Okay.
That's where their power comes from.
So now let's get to this idea that our existing knowledge actually acts like an internal guide, which this paper calls the executive function of knowledge.
Right.
So it's not just that our knowledge is sitting there passively in long-term memory.
No, it's active.
Yeah, it's actually directing how we think.
Yeah, it's like a conductor.
Yeah, okay.
It's guiding the orchestra of your thoughts.
And how we solve problems,
Exactly.
especially within our area of expertise.
Right. It's like having an internal compass.
Okay, an internal compass. I like that.
Right. Pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah, so for novices, they haven't developed this internal guidance system yet.
Right. They don't have the map.
Yeah, so they rely more on trial and error, or they need those really direct step-by-step instructions.
Yeah, they need someone to tell them which way to go.
Yeah.
They need the external GPS.
And that's essentially like a temporary executive function for them.
Right. Exactly. It's filling in until their internal one develops.
Okay.
It's providing the structure.
And this leads us to this principle of cognitive economy, which basically means our brains are efficient.
Yeah. They like to conserve energy.
Yeah, they like to take the easy route.
Right. Always looking for the path of least resistance.
Which makes sense, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, why struggle to figure something out from scratch if you already have a reliable way of doing it?
Exactly. It's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, but the paper points out that this tendency towards cognitive economy, it can actually sometimes lead us astray, right?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes those shortcuts lead to dead ends.
Yeah.
So like we might stick with an explanation that's simpler, even if it's not entirely accurate,
Right.
because it's easier to process.
Right, than grappling with the more correct but more complex information.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so it's about efficiency, but sometimes at the cost of accuracy or completeness.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so now we get to this idea of a mismatch, right?
Sure.
Like when there's a mismatch between your internal knowledge, that internal compass, and the external guidance that you're getting,
Right.
it can lead to what the paper calls an unbalanced executive function.
Yeah. Like things are out of sync.
Yeah.
It's like your compass is pointing one way, but the map is telling you to go another.
And this is really crucial for understanding this expertise reversal effect.
Absolutely. This is where it all starts to come together.
So what does an unbalanced executive function actually look like in real life?
So the paper highlights two main situations.
Okay.
The first is when a novice, someone who's brand new, lacks that internal knowledge.
Right.
And then they're not given enough external guidance.
Right.
It's like they're thrown in the deep end without a life preserver.
Right. Yeah. And that just leads to all sorts of unproductive struggling.
Exactly. Yeah, they're overwhelmed. They're confused. They're just spinning their wheels.
Yeah.
And their working memory is just overloaded with all this searching and this uncertainty.
Right. Right.
It's not efficient.
Okay. So that's the first situation where there's just not enough support for the novice.
Right.
Now, what's the second situation?
So the second situation, and this is really the core of the expertise reversal effect,
Okay.
is when experts, people who already have that strong internal knowledge base, are given too much external guidance.
Right.
It's like they're being told how to do something they already know how to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this forces them to process information that's redundant for them.
Right.
They have to constantly compare those external instructions with what they already understand deeply.
Right.
And that takes up valuable mental resources
Okay.
that could be better used for actually learning new things.
Yeah, it's like mental clutter.
Exactly. It's like, imagine trying to read a book with someone constantly whispering in your ear, telling you what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's distracting, it's annoying, it's slowing you down.
Right. Okay, so let's get to this main event.
The expertise reversal effect.
Yes, the expertise reversal effect itself. So we've danced around it a bit, but just to be super clear, this is the idea that the teaching methods and the learning materials that are super effective for beginners can actually become ineffective or even backfire for
Right.
people who have more experience.
Exactly. It flips.
And this flip, this reversal, it happens because of that unbalanced executive function that we just talked about.
Right. It all comes back to that mismatch
Yeah.
between what you know and what you're being told.
Okay. Okay.
And the paper also brings up this concept from Richard Mayer
Okay.
called cognitive conflict.
Okay.
And this is the idea that when experts encounter information that clashes with their existing mental models, it creates this conflict in their minds.
Right. Like a dissonance. Like, wait, this doesn't fit
Exactly.
with what I already know.
Yeah, and then they have to spend mental energy resolving that conflict.
Right. Right.
And that adds to the cognitive overload.
Okay. So it's not just that it's redundant, but it's actually like contradicting.
Yeah, in some cases it can be. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so it's like, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
And your brain's like, wait, this doesn't make sense.
And all of this really comes back to this idea of redundancy, right?
Yes.
In the context of cognitive load.
Mhm.
So, information that is essential, super helpful for a novice,
Yeah, absolutely crucial.
can become totally redundant for an expert.
Yeah, they're like, I already know this, move on.
Yeah, and then, processing that unnecessary material, that's what's taking up those mental resources.
Yeah, it's bogging them down.
And that's, potentially preventing them from learning new things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not just extra information in general, it's specifically this overlap
Right.
with what you already know really well.
Yeah, it's like being told the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, okay. Now, to really understand why this happens, it's helpful to break down the different types of mental effort involved in learning,
Yeah.
the different types of cognitive load, right?
Right.
So the paper talks about three main types.
Okay.
And the first one is intrinsic cognitive load. So what exactly is that?
So intrinsic cognitive load is the inherent difficulty of the material itself.
Okay.
But it's really important to remember that it's relative to your current level of understanding.
Okay.
So it's not just about the material in isolation.
Right.
It's about how that material interacts with what you already know.
Okay.
So it's the mental effort required to grasp the essential complexity of the topic,
Mm-hmm.
how the different elements relate to each other,
Right.
and how they connect to your existing knowledge. And the paper really emphasizes that some level of intrinsic load is actually necessary for learning to happen.
Right. It's like if it's too easy, you're not really learning.
Exactly. Yeah, there needs to be some challenge.
So for novices, managing that intrinsic load, it often means breaking down the information into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Right. Yeah, bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, or focusing on just a few key elements at a time.
Yeah, don't try to do it all at once.
Right.
Master the basics first.
But what about for people who already have a solid grasp of the fundamentals?
So for more knowledgeable learners, once they have that foundation,
Mm-hmm.
the intrinsic load might actually need to be increased.
Okay.
Keep them engaged and challenged.
Right. It's like, if you're an experienced chess player,
Mm-hmm.
learning the basic moves again isn't going to make you any better.
Right.
You need to start looking at more complex strategies and tactics.
Yeah, okay. So it's about finding the right level of challenge
Exactly.
for your current level. Yeah, push
Yeah.
yourself just beyond your comfort zone.
All right. So then we have this germane cognitive load.
Right.
What role does that play in all of this?
So germane cognitive load is the mental effort that you're actively putting in
Okay.
to really understand the material deeply.
Mm-hmm.
It's the effort that leads to building those strong, lasting connections in your knowledge base.
Okay.
So things like trying to explain the new concepts in your own words.
Right.
Or thinking about how this new information fits with what you already know.
Yeah.
Those are activities that increase germane load.
Okay.
And this is the good kind of cognitive load. It's
Yeah.
the effort that leads to real understanding.
Okay. So intrinsic load is about the difficulty of the material itself.
Yeah.
Germane load is about how much effort we're putting into making sense of it.
Right.
Now, what about the third type of cognitive load?
So the third type is extraneous cognitive load.
Okay.
And this is the bad kind.
Okay.
This is the mental effort that doesn't actually help you learn and can even get in the way.
Okay.
And it's often caused by poor instructional design.
Okay.
So things like disorganized materials, having to look at different places for related information that split attention.
Right.
Or, really crucially for our topic today, redundant information.
Yeah, okay, and this is where that expertise reversal effect really comes into play, right?
Yeah, this is where it all connects.
Yeah, so something that might be essential for a novice, to reduce that extraneous load, like those really clear step-by-step instructions.
Yeah, the hand-holding.
Or having the text and the diagrams right next to each other.
Right, making it super explicit.
Yeah, that can actually become extraneous load for an expert.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they have to process that extra information.
That's like, I got it already, move on.
It's a complete flip.
Yeah, a total reversal.
What reduces mental clutter for a beginner creates mental clutter for an expert.
Exactly, yeah. What was helpful becomes a hindrance.
Okay.
And the reverse is also true, right? Like methods that might seem overwhelming for a beginner, like open-ended problem solving with minimal guidance.
Yeah.
Those can actually reduce extraneous load for an expert.
Right.
Because they're able to just dive in, use their existing knowledge,
Okay.
and they don't need all that extra scaffolding.
So it's about giving them the freedom to explore.
Exactly. Yeah, let them run with it.
All right, this is really starting to make sense.
Good.
Now the paper goes into a lot of real-world research, actual studies.
Yeah, the empirical evidence.
Yeah, that show this effect in action, across different learning situations.
Right, because it's not just a theory.
Yeah, so let's look at some of these examples.
Okay.
It mentions these longitudinal studies
Mm-hmm.
where researchers have actually followed the same learners over time.
Right, tracking their progress.
As they gain expertise. So what did those studies reveal?
So these longitudinal studies have been really powerful in demonstrating this effect. So for example, there were studies where people were learning about electrical systems.
Okay.
And the researchers found that initially, having the text integrated with the diagrams was really helpful for novices.
Okay.
It reduced that split attention effect,
Right, all right.
where you have to look in two different places to get the information.
Yeah.
However, as those same learners became more knowledgeable, through training, that integrated text actually started to get in the way.
Okay.
They actually learned better when the text and diagrams were separate,
Interesting.
because that integrated text became redundant for them.
Okay.
So what was helpful at the start became less effective as they gained expertise.
So it literally reversed.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, a classic case of the expertise reversal effect.
What was beneficial support became unnecessary clutter.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
It's like, once you know how to ride a bike, you don't need the training wheels anymore.
Right.
In fact, they'll just slow you down.
Okay, so the paper also talks about, different ways of presenting information, like using words versus pictures.
Yeah, different representations.
Yeah, and how that can affect learners with different levels of expertise. So what are some of the key findings there?
So one interesting finding is that using graphics and illustrations, that tends to really help learners who don't have much prior knowledge about a topic.
Okay.
It makes it more concrete, easier to grasp.
Right.
But this advantage often disappears or even reverses for those who are already more knowledgeable.
Okay.
Because experts can often create their own mental images. They don't need those external visuals as much.
Right.
And in fact, sometimes those visuals can actually distract them
Okay.
from more abstract or conceptual processing.
So it's like they already have the picture in their head.
Exactly, yeah.
They don't need you to draw it for them.
And it's like, if you're already fluent in a language, you don't need a picture dictionary.
Right.
It's just adding extra steps.
The paper also talks about a study that compared using more realistic, picture-like representations versus more abstract, symbolic representations in a science simulation. So what did that one show?
So this study looked at middle school students learning about gas laws
Okay.
using a computer simulation. And they found that for students who had lower prior knowledge in science, adding those more realistic elements, like showing actual burners under a container to represent heating,
Yeah.
that was really helpful for them.
Oh.
It made it more concrete, easier to understand.
Okay.
However, students who already had a stronger science background, they actually learned better when the simulation used more abstract symbolic representations,
Okay.
just words and numbers.
So it's like the more advanced students, they could already make those connections.
Exactly.
They didn't need the visual aids.
Right, the visuals became extraneous for them.
Interesting.
But it's worth noting that this reversal was more apparent when the simulations were simpler.
Yeah.
When they got really complex,
Mm-hmm.
even the experts seemed to benefit from the more concrete support.
Okay, so the complexity of the material also plays a role here.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not always a straightforward reversal.
Right, it's an interplay of factors.
Okay, what about how we structure written information?
Mm-hmm.
The paper mentions how the coherence of the text can affect different learners.
Yeah, so coherence is basically how clearly the ideas are connected.
Mm.
And research has shown that making instructional text more coherent by adding explanations and connecting ideas explicitly, that's generally good for learners who don't know much about the subject.
Okay.
It helps them build that mental model.
Yeah.
But more knowledgeable learners, they can actually sometimes learn better from text that's less explicitly coherent.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But the idea is that less coherent text forces them to actively engage with the material more,
Okay.
to fill in the gaps themselves,
Right.
to make those connections on their own. So for experts, a more streamlined, less spoon-fed text can actually lead to better understanding.
So it's almost like they're being forced to think more deeply about it
Exactly.
because they're not just passively receiving the information.
Right.
They have to actively construct their own understanding.
Yeah, and that deeper processing leads to better learning.
Okay. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's not always about making things as clear and simple as possible.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit of challenge can be a good thing.
The paper also gives an example related to vocabulary definitions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether they're integrated directly into the text or they're provided in a separate glossary.
Yeah, that's a classic example of the expertise reversal effect.
Okay.
So studies have found that for younger learners, or learners who are new to a subject, integrating the definitions directly into the text is usually more effective.
Right.
It avoids that split attention problem
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
having to look back and forth between the text and a glossary.
Yeah.
But for more advanced learners, like university students,
Hmm.
having a separate glossary has actually been shown to be better.
Really?
Yeah, because those integrated definitions can start to feel redundant,
Right.
and they slow down the reading flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they already know what those words mean, so it's just extra information they have to process.
Again, what works for the novice, becomes less effective for the expert.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a consistent pattern.
Okay, let's move on to how the level of instructional guidance
Hmm.
and the way we sequence learning tasks, how that can interact with expertise.
Right.
So what kind of reversals have researchers observed in these areas?
So this is a really interesting area of research.
Okay.
And one of the key findings is about the use of worked examples versus asking learners to solve problems themselves.
Okay.
So worked examples are basically where you show someone the complete steps to solve a problem.
Right.
And these are super helpful for novices
Yeah.
when they're first learning the procedures and building that basic understanding.
Okay.
But as learners gain expertise,
Mm.
relying too heavily on worked examples can actually hold them back
Okay.
because it limits their opportunities to actually practice solving problems on their own
Right.
and apply their knowledge.
Yeah.
So the benefit shifts towards more problem solving for experts.
So it's like those training wheels again.
Exactly.
At some point, you got to take them off.
Yeah, you got to let them fly solo.
So what about the timing of that switch? Like
Yeah.
when you go from providing lots of examples to more independent problem solving.
So studies have actually looked at this specifically,
Okay.
and they found that for novices, a slower, more gradual transition is generally better.
Okay.
They need that continued support
Okay.
as they're building their confidence.
Yeah.
But for experts, a faster transition, even starting with problem solving early on,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
can actually be more effective
Okay.
because they're often ready to apply their knowledge right away.
Right.
And they might find those prolonged worked examples kind of boring and frustrating.
Yeah, they're like, I get it. Let me try it.
Exactly. Yeah, give me a challenge.
But okay. The paper also talks about how the amount of, directiveness in the help that we provide can have different effects based on expertise.
Right. So how much hand-holding are you doing?
Yeah.
So more directive, step-by-step guidance, that's usually more helpful for novices
Right.
who need that clear structure.
Yeah.
But for experts, less directive help, like maybe just some hints
Mm.
or some general suggestions, that can be more beneficial
Okay.
because it allows them to use their own knowledge
Right.
and to figure things out for themselves.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the right amount of support for the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
It's not one size fits all.
Okay, the paper even mentions how different kinds of visual aids in lectures